Okie dokie. All right, here we go. We're recording. All right. Welcome to the 5th edition of 10-Minute Excel training. We've almost made it to 1 full hour. Reminder that the class is recorded, so you can watch it again afterwards, or, do with it as you will. Please open the workbook that I sent around this morning. It should look something like this. All right. Can we all see that? Nice. All right. So today is the final part 3 of 3 of things employers look for when they ask whether you know how to use Excel series. We're going to be talking about pivot tables. Pivot tables is probably not as complex as the last 2 things we talked about, I'd say. They're actually pretty easy, but also kind of not at the same time. Pivot tables are one of those things that everyone kind of knows about, even if you have never used Excel before. They'll like everyone can joke around and say, "Oh yeah, Excel pivot tables." But they also sound really cool and impressive when you don't know anything about Excel. But from what I've found, the more you learn about Excel, the more you know about Excel, the less cool pivot tables become, because they're actually they're okay. They get the job done, basically as well as a frozen dinner gets the job done. But it's nothing like a real meal. Speaking of, now you'll see that I've got a table here of various meals I've pretended to track. I don't actually eat any of this stuff, guys. I only eat 1 meal a day. That's how I maintain my absolute pristine physique. But what a pivot table does, it allows you to cut data in different ways. So when you're starting to look at data analysis, like pivot table is probably a pretty good start in terms of how to analyze data. Let's jump straight into it. Okay, so we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 columns here of data. You'll notice that each of these columns has a column title. Yeah. Now that's actually pretty key. If you don't have a column title, you're not going to be able to produce a pivot table. So for example, if I got rid of the word day here, and then I wanted to insert a pivot table, so you go Alt and V, so insert up the top, V for pivot table, and then you go enter. You see the pivot table field name is not valid. That's because the field name, also known as the column title, is blank. Okay, so what you do need to do is have something in every single column title. Okay, so once we have column titles in everything, we can produce a table. So as I said, the highlight everything, Alt and V, which is insert pivot table. You can choose to insert it in a new workbook, which is what I normally do. Otherwise, if you want it specifically in this existing worksheet, you can put it there as well. Honestly, it's up to you guys. But here, this is what a blank pivot table looks like. So if this is a blank pivot table, we haven't populated the pivot table with any data yet. And that's where this part comes in. So these, you can see, are our 5 columns. Yeah. Usually, if you're working with a big data set, you'll probably have a lot more columns. But for now, keeping it simple, we only have 5 columns. Now, basically, as instructed, you drag fields between the areas below. So we've got filters, we've got columns, we've got rows, and we've got values. It will make a lot more sense once we start putting things in. But basically, filter allows you to, as the name suggests, filter things out. Columns will form the the y-axis of your table. X-axis? I don't know. Maths is lost on me. Yeah, basically this one. And then your rows will run down the side of your table. And then values is what populates the numbers or whatever you choose to put into your actual table. So really, you can just cut your data in various ways. So for example, if I want to show, let's go meal, breakfast, lunch, dinner, spaced out over the days, and then I want to know how many calories I've eaten. Okay, so there you can see, I'm just going to reformat that because it's gross. So you can say that on Mondays, I've eaten a total of 4,526 calories for breakfast on Mondays. Yeah. So, I mean, that doesn't really mean anything, but it's, again, a way for you to actually cut your data in certain ways. How about I do a filter on just... All right, so I've dropped the food label into the filters quadrant, and you'll see that up here I've got a food drop down here. Currently it's gone all, but say for example I just want to see how many calories I've eaten on a vegetarian meals. Then you'll say, you know, it looks like I eat the most vegetarian meals on a Friday evening. And it also looks like I don't eat any vegetarian meals for a Wednesday breakfast or a Monday lunch. So, to be honest, that's basically it with pivot tables. Like, you just throw your different variables into the different boxes, and then it cuts your data differently. So in this case, I've gone with a sum of calories. You can see here, sum of calories. I could actually go value field settings here. And then I can choose, instead of a sum, I can go an average instead. So on average, my vegetarian meals on a Monday breakfast is 830 calories. Similarly, I can go, what's my maximum? All right, so the highest, let's chuck all of them back in. So on any given day, the highest number of calories I've eaten for Monday breakfast is 975. That's max. You can do count, which just gives you the number of instances that actually were in there. And then, I mean, like, there's a bunch of other stuff you can do in there. But to be honest, pivot tables are, yeah, as I said, they're good for like your initial data analysis. It's okay. There are a lot of problems with pivot tables. For example, if you edit something in this table, then you need to go pivot table analyze at the top here and refresh it. Yeah, and people often forget to do that. Otherwise, it's also quite annoying to get it into a nice format. Like, all pivot tables kind of look like this, and it's not the prettiest thing in the world. Copying and pasting pivot tables is a bit annoying. So yeah, it's good for some things, but once you learn more about Excel, it becomes less interesting. One interesting function is if you double click a cell in a pivot table, it'll actually give you all the data relating to that cell. So for example, if I double click this one, Monday breakfast, these are all my Monday breakfasts. Yeah. So it'll give you a new sheet with that cross section of data. Or if I want to go grand total of total breakfasts, then this will give me all my breakfasts just by double clicking. That is basically it for pivot tables. I mean, like, there's other stuff you can do, but honestly, like, if you're gonna use a pivot table, if you're gonna get into that kind of level of depth with a pivot table, you might as well just build a real table. But now you know how to use pivot tables, and people who don't know Excel will find you very impressive and sexy and very attractive.
Nice, Matt. So, quick question.
Yep.
What is a better version of a pivot table? So you said, is it just building like a regular table with different...
Pretty much. Like, say I wanted to know how much breakfast I eat on a Monday, or like, I mean, like, it's good because it's quick and it's like quick and easy. But like if I wanted to build out a proper model, I wouldn't use a pivot table as a model, for example. I would actually build a model that like links to data and looks up data properly. Because firstly, it's much better to look at because the formatting is really annoying in a pivot table. Secondly, like you get a bit more flexibility as to like what data you're actually capturing. So as I said, like it gets the job done, but it's as good as like a lean cuisine meal.
Cool. Thanks, mate.
Any other questions about pivot tables?
So, mate, is it fair to say that pivot tables are most appropriate in analysis of past events?
Yeah, because you are definitely putting in past data. So when you're starting to look like, well, I mean, you can kind of like trend it a bit, which will kind of lead you to your future stuff. But ultimately, as I said before, like if you're trying to build out a real model, I wouldn't use a pivot table.
Yep. So I'm just thinking in terms of practicality that it's best to consider a pivot table potentially in use of or during a lessons learnt or project review application.
Yeah, it's a very pretty summary.
Yep.
A pivot table is a good summary. That's it.
Cool. And maybe, Paul, for like your own just analysis, just understand something rather than presenting it.
Yep.
Yeah. So you do get a little bit of analysis in there in terms of like historic data. Ultimately, it's just a good way to cut and summarize data.
Yeah, the ability to the flexibility to click and drag.
Kind of move things around a bit is quite nice. Yeah. But ultimately, if you're building a real model, I wouldn't use a pivot table.
Cool.
Any other questions, or are we all good?
All good for me. Thanks,
Nice
buddy.
one.
All good, Matt. Thank you.
No worries.
Matt.
Have a good one, guys.
Cheers, Matt.
Thanks, Matty.